Okay, now, who are we? You guys have the question, who's the male mentoring? Who are the male mentors? Who are we? Without further ado, we want to bring up one of our founding members, one of the smallest brothers I know, Mr. Barney.
Good morning, everyone. Who are we? First and foremost, we are the men of. We felt it was very important that we begin to work with our youth, and we thought that was so important that, as opposed to just having a committee of organization, the male mentoring portion is on the third Saturday of each month, and our primary goal is to make a difference in a youth's life.
Kids who have race pride didn't do better in school. Okay, so that's really the foundation. One of the foundations. Now you be God first. That's what we get. We're church. I'm proud of our church for doing this. Thank God for being a Baptist church. But however, the kids need race pride. They need to feel good about being black. That's what they need to feel good about being African. And the Lord has blessed us. Dr. Asante, right down the street. Thank God for Dr. Asante. Without further ado, we're going to bring our brother, our friend, our teacher, Dr. Molefi Asante. Thank you very much. It's an honor, and I want to just give praises, and also to say to Reverend Brennan, and also to compliment all the members of the men mentoring group, that this is a great privilege for me. I've been here before, back 20 and 30 years ago, I guess, when Gus Rowland was at this church, so I'm delighted to be back again to a great church. This is a historic church, to be in your presence. And then to come here this morning as we have come, and to listen to the singing and also to watch the skill of the artistic performance of the dance troupe and the dancing. You know what I said to myself was that we are perhaps the most talented group of people. Probably, I mean, I'm not thinking of, I'm just saying this from what I can see, that if we were a nation unto ourselves, they would say, there lives a nation of artists and capable people. Because the skills that we have everywhere, you find them everywhere. This morning we're here in Canaan, but you can be somewhere else and see dancers and musicians and artists, great drummers, and you say, is everybody a poet among the African American people? We all have poetry. I'm sure some of y'all have poetry. Some of these young people, they probably start writing poetry already. It's that we are talented people. And what we don't realize sometimes when we see the destructive evidence of the racism and discrimination, and we see the casualties among our people, we think that this is all of us, but it's not. We are incredibly resourceful people with tremendous victories, and victories in every field, in sciences, in history, in arts, and culture. And sometimes those are marginalized so that we don't know. I mean, we don't know that the person, one of the key scientists responsible for the Mars rover, is a black scientist. We don't know it, but it's true. Right. We don't know that the microphone in the camera that you have, or in the telephone that you have, the electric microphone was invented by James West, a black man. And all the billions of telephones, there is something invented by a black man in there. James West invented it, you see. So we are an incredibly talented people. And part of our job, and your job, particularly the men mentoring group, is to get that information to our young people. And that's why this morning, I thought I wanted to share with you a couple of things. But before I do, let me just make another announcement. You've heard about the Molefi Asante Institute. It's a think tank. That's what it is. We decided that after so many years, when you have the nearly 7,000 think tanks in the world, that there ought to be at least one African-American think tank that is nonpartisan, independent, and private, that's not government funded, that we can meet together and we can think about how to solve our problems. Because there are 4,000 of the think tanks in this country, 4,000. They're mostly all controlled by white folks. And they are like the Heritage Foundation, the Brookings Institute, the American Enterprise Institute. There are many, many, many of them. There are, as I say, 4,000 of them. And there are about 10 that identify as African American, but most of them are funded by the U.S. government. So we said, you know what? Let's have a private think tank where we can pull together resources of African intellectuals and scholars from all over the African world, from the Caribbean, from Brazil, from the continent of Africa, black people living in Europe, everywhere. And when we decide on a question that we need to consider, we consider it, and then once we get the facts, we disseminate this information. That's what a think tank does. That's what the Molefi Asante Institute is. And we also have lectures from time to time. This evening, for example, at 5 o'clock, we're having a lecture by Dr. Shabaka from Brooklyn and on how to build black institutions. That's part of what we do. That's one of the ways that we help to fund the organization because we have the lectures come in. But the fundamental purpose is not so much the lectures, but the securing of data and information and the spreading that information around to opinion leaders like presidents of African countries, congressional black caucus, preachers, black ministers, everywhere. So we have talking points when we say this is an issue. What's our talking point on the issue? And we don't normally have a talking point. It's just like right now, for example, in Syria. What's the black talking point on Syria? What's our discussion about it? Everybody else, they've developed their talking points, but we have to also be thinking, what are our talking points about these various issues that are going on? Last night, we had a big meeting at the Institute about Sudan. Right now in Sudan, you know they have a great struggle in Sudan between the Arab people in Sudan and the Africans. And the country of Sudan is 95% African. But the people who control it, the 5% who control it, consider themselves Arabs, even though they look like the rest of us. But they have denied their African heritage and culture and language. They forgot their grandmother's language, and they say they are Arabs. And so they attack all the other people. So the question now is, what are our talking points on the Sudanese issue? And that's one of the things that we're working on. I just wanted to make that announcement, but we're at 5535 Germantown Avenue, 5535, and anytime you want to stop there for any of our lectures, we have a calendar with events and so on. We can give you the calendar of events, and you can also get it online at www.mkainstitute.com. Brothers and sisters, I want to talk about two things today. I want to talk about knowledge, and I want to talk about character. Because those 2 points are very key to how we go about training and mentoring our young men. And I'm very happy to see the young men in the audience, the young brothers in here. I'm really happy to see them. It's wonderful. They represent the continuation of the struggle for victory. So I want to talk about how we should educate and train our young men, as well as our young women. But our young men, since this is a male mentoring group, let's talk about this. First of all, you cannot get anywhere without knowledge. Knowledge is fundamental. This is fundamental. Here we are, a people who were the first in the world to write. First people to write. We're the first people to write. And our children have problems sometimes in school. But we were the first ones to create schools. We were the first ones to create universities. And yet, there remains within our community sometimes a very strong anti-intellectual strain. I don't know where that strain comes from, but it's not good. Because what it does is it takes away a large part of our history and our culture. We are a phenomenal people. I mean, this is not romance about the African community or African American community or African Caribbean community. We are blessed. We are a blessed people. Despite all that we've gone through, we are still a blessed people. Look at it. The Australian black people, the black fellows, lost an entire continent. In this country, it's born with several birth defects. The enslavement of the Africans, the genocide of the native peoples. They lost a continent, 2 continents. The Native Americans lost 2 continents. People say, well, they're alcoholics. Well, why do you think, I mean, what's going on with them? You lose a whole continent from Pacific to Atlantic. The people are depressed. And they have been driven almost to the edge of suicide because they lost the continent. And they lost South America as well. Africans did not lose Africa. We didn't lose it. We lost our minds. We didn't lose the continent. We still got the continent. I've traveled all over the continent, from Cairo to Johannesburg. We got it. It's a huge continent. You can put the United States, the 48 states, the continental United States, you can put them into Africa 4 times. That's how big Africa is. You just drop all 48 states in 4 times. You can drop the United States into the Sahara Desert, and the desert will swallow up the 48 states. That's how big the desert is, big as the United States. So it's a huge continent. We didn't lose it. Europeans tried to take it. Cecil John Rhodes said that he wanted to take it from Cairo to Cape Town. He wanted to put it all under the control of the British government. That he wanted all of Africa, just like they have all of North America, just like they have all of South America. They brought it back to Africa, like they have all of Australia. African peoples, in terms of the resilience of them, the understanding that we have of not only the divine, but the understanding that we have of relationships and the knowledge we have of nature, it helps us. Let me talk about this knowledge a bit, then I'll talk about character in a minute. You know, the fundamental question that you hear asked sometimes is, who are we? And we ask this question, who are we? Because it's an important question, but also because people don't know. You ask someone, who are you? A lot of times people don't know who they are. And that's why you ask. And sometimes it says, I don't know, and I ask you, who are you? You tell me who you are. But more than your name, who are you? Because sometimes we don't even know our name. Now, I know I'm in Canaan, so I can talk to you like I talk everywhere I go, because it's the same message. That's why we say my name is John, because we don't know ourselves. That's why we say my name is Mary, because we don't know ourselves. That's why I used to say my name was Arthur, because I didn't know myself. You know? When you don't know yourself, you don't even know your name. That's why Malcolm X said, my name's going to be X, unknown. I don't know it. Because we don't know who we are. Let me tell you who you are. And then that's fundamental knowledge, basically. The last pyramid in the world, built in Egypt, was built around 2500 BC. That's 2,500 years before Jesus. The pyramid was up. Black people built that pyramid. Black people built the pyramid up. We put the pyramid up at a time that when Jesus Christ was born, he could look back and see that the pyramid was 2,500 years old. 2,500 years old. That's how old the pyramid was when Jesus was. Who put it up? Black people. No Jews put that up. Black people put the pyramids up. We built the pyramids. The tombs, the temples, we built them. Our people, our ancestors, from our continent. We built them. The whole Nile Valley complex, from Ethiopia to Sudan to Chad to Egypt. We built them. That's Africa. That's not Europe. It's not the Middle East. It's not South America. It's not Asia. It's Africa. It's African civilization. Fundamental. We built it. We constructed it. We, our people, our ancestors gave the world geometry. We were the ones who created geometry. Why did we create geometry? We created geometry because every year when the Nile River overflowed its banks, it destroyed the boundaries of the farms. And no one knew exactly where your farm ended and where it began. So they had to create geometry so that every year after the flood, they would give you precisely the same amount of land you had before the flood. That's how geometry was created. Black people created geometry. We created mathematics. Jehudi is said to have been the one to give us the knowledge. We were the ones who gave the world astronomy. You know why? Because it doesn't rain in Egypt. It hadn't rained in Egypt in 10 years. So what people do, the sky's clear. You sit on top of a house and you look at the sky. You chart the heavens. You record anything that's unusual. That's where all of this knowledge comes from. Look at this. We were the ones who gave the world philosophy, the sense of justice, the reason. This didn't come from the Greeks. Look, the Greeks do not even appear in history until 1000 BC, 1,000 years before Jesus. We hear about Rome. But already I told you the pyramids were finished 2,500 years before Jesus. So black people are already doing their things in Nubia and in Egypt already. Early on, Egypt and Nubia are classical civilizations of all of the African civilizations, including the Yoruba, the Zulu, and the Igbo, and the Efik, and so forth. All those civilizations, their classical civilization is the Nile Valley civilizations, Egypt and Nubia. Just like in Europe, the classical civilization of Europe are Rome and Greece. All the other civilizations, German and French, Russia, they hark back to Rome and Greece. In Asia, it's India and China. All, whether you count Burmese, China and India are your classical civilizations. In Africa, it's Nubia, Sudan, and Egypt. Now, what happened to us? What happened to us was the enslavement of the Africans made it necessary for Europe to basically wipe out of our minds and our brains our connection to Africa. And my argument has always been that the fundamental problem with our youth often in this society is not self-esteem. Most of our young, this is my view, because I've read the literature on this too. Some psychologists wrote that African American adolescent girls have a higher self-esteem than white adolescent girls. That they like themselves better than white girls like themselves. I think that's true with men too. I haven't seen the research on the men, but I think that black men, they like the way they walk, talk, dress, play basketball, dance. We like ourselves individually. Right. That's not a major, I mean, there may be some hits and misses on that, but for the most part, even the children who are acting out, as we call it in school, they like themselves. Right. So it's not a self-esteem problem that black kids have. We have a cultural esteem problem. We don't like being Africans. We don't like that. That's our problem. As the guy tells me from one of my friends, he said, I'm okay, man. It's just the rest of these people. I'm okay, you see. But there's that collective sense of Africa. So that's why people will fight you about that. I had the most incredible experience in Jamaica talking to the Ministry of Education. They said, this is not a black country. This is not an African country, we're a multicultural country. I said, man, you're 85 or 90% black. Oh, well, but we're not African. So how y'all get here? Where y'all come from? How did the black people get in Jamaica if they didn't come from Africa? So there's this disconnect that does not occur, now look at this, it does not occur with Asians. Asian children, they say, have lower self-esteem than black American children, but yet they do better in school. They have a strong cultural esteem. We can do anything. We're Asians. And they have a collective sense that their history allows them to have a sense of expressive power. That for us, we're out here as individuals always say, well, I'm going to do this and do that, but we don't take the sense of the totality of our culture. White people do that. We have I have a colleague who's from Turkey. And the first thing she did when she got here was become white. In other words, to identify with the white American culture. She's from Turkey, but Shakespeare becomes the greatest writer in the world. You see, Europeans have no problem with that. This is why they wear the Italian suits. You see, I wear an Italian suit. I could be from Britain or from Russia, but the Italian suit, just because it's Italian, doesn't mean I can't wear it. They're all European. We're all in the same process. If you talk about the poet Dante, well, Dante is part of my heritage too, even though I'm from Spain, you see. So they just take it all. And we are taught this division, this factionalization, that I'm not a part of it. I'm not I don't deal with Haitians. And that's how I taught my children. I gave them a sense of the collective power of Africa. greatest military genius in the Americas was Toussaint Louverture. He was a Haitian. Greatest fortress ever built in the Americas was La Citadelle, built by Christophe in Haiti. Most brilliant strategist of war in the Americas was Dessalines. He was a Haitian. He defeated Leclerc, Napoleon's general. I take that's my heritage. I don't give that up. I just came from Brazil last month. I spoke down in Florianópolis in Santa Catarina, which is in the south of Rio, in Buenos and Sao Paulo. And I said to them, the work of Abdias do Nascimento, the great genius of Brazil, and the work in Brazil of Leila Gonzalez, I said, those geniuses of Afro-Brazilian culture, I accept as part of my heritage. Because if I accept that as a part of my heritage, it expands my heritage. Right. You talk about the African world, or African people, well, we have some of the greatest artists who ever lived. But I must know, this is where knowledge comes in, I must know them to accept them. If I don't have this experience, this knowledge, and nobody has told me, then there's no way that I can accept them. So that's what we must do for our children. This is what you talk about, rituals of passage. The real rituals of passage for our children is to provide them with information so when they go to any school, if you send them to school here, in England, in France, in China, wherever you send them to school, prepare them with a cultural armor, just like you do with a spiritual armor. You prepare them, and you send them out into the world, they will surprise you. Because our children are geniuses. Literally, they are geniuses. They can, I mean, you saw the 3 young sisters up here earlier. They said, we can do anything. But you must train them. And you know, my grandson says to me sometimes, he says, and he's a straight A student, and he's 11, right? 12. And he doesn't like to make a mistake. And you ask him something, and he doesn't know. He would say to you, but nobody ever taught me. If they had taught me, I would know. You didn't give me the book to read on that. I mean, how are you going to ask me a question? I don't, you know. But I can't know it. Right. That's why we must educate our children. Not only did we, our people, create the greatest material monuments like the pyramid and the Eredo Trench. Most people never heard of the Eredo Trench. It's a fortification that was built around ancient Yoruba culture. It is larger than the pyramids in the power of what it took to build the Eredo Trench. It's a trench 100 miles around in circumference that was built around part of the Yoruba kingdom to protect the kingdom. And it's like 30 meters deep, 30 yards deep, I guess. A meter is 39 inches. 30 meters deep and about 30 meters wide. And it's built around 100 miles. They just discovered it in the 1980s. But they discovered something else just this year. They discovered the largest megalopolis in the world. That is an urban area in ruins in the world. They discovered it in South Africa. In the northern part of South Africa, stretching into Mozambique, are the ruins, the largest ruins, rock, stone ruins of a city ever in history discovered in Africa. There's still stuff to be discovered on that continent. It's not, I mean, because, you know, we never, there's not that search for it, you see? But it's that power. So that's why I say knowledge is at the core. It's the fundamental thing. Who are we? What are our traditions? The first spiritual traditions in the world come from African people. We were the first ones to name God. Nobody named God before Africa.
The Jews didn't name God before us. The Chinese didn't name God. We call God's name in Africa. Don't get scared. You know what, all the stuff we did. No, that's us. We created the first concepts of spirituality, the concept of Ma'at. We said that Ma'at, when God created the universe, the only force alongside God was a force of Ma'at. We said that. We wrote it in the text. But you have to know that you got to go read the text. The ancient Egyptian text has it there. I will just say a few more things about this, and then I'm going to go to character. But I just need to say a few more things about this knowledge, because I mean, you are expansive. Canaan understands this, but the children need to know. You know the story that we tell in the Bible of Cain and Abel. But you know there was a story before that, right? You know the earlier story? The story is that Almighty God created Shu and Tefnah, the air and moisture. Air and moisture created the earth, Gael, and Nut, the sky. And the story is that they created then human beings. All-Sar, All-Sept, Nepheg, and Sept. And the story is that Sept kills his brother, All-Sept. And the story is that All-Sept, his body is torn into 14 pieces, strewn all over the earth. He is searched for by his sister, Sept. She finds him, but she is pregnant with a child. The child is born, and his name is called Heru. The Greeks call him Horus. Heru works with his mother and his aunt Nepheg to find the father, and they raise him up when they find all the pieces along the Nile River, and they call him the God of the resurrection. Heru is then called Sa-Ra, the son of God. That's the African story. That story is the base, it seems to me, for the Jewish story. Because it came thousands of years earlier. It's an earlier story. It's not, it doesn't deny your story, it's a story that you ought to know about. Because if you know that story helps you to talk to young brothers and let them know that, hey, you are not simply the borrower of somebody else's story. You had a story even before that story, even though you can accept this particular story. You see what I'm saying? That's what we have to do. That is the fundamental basis. I always say that when you give children that kind of strength and knowledge, they can accept your story. There's no reason, for example, why a brother, I've told this story so many times, people may have heard this tale before. I was coming from the hospital visiting with somebody who was one of our students at Temple, and a brother was on the street, saying, brother, let me have a quarter, brother, I need some. So I reached in my pocket and gave him some. He said, Assalamu alaikum. And I walked away thinking, why would this guy think that I was a Muslim? That's what I walked away thinking. I'm dressed just like I'm dressed now. Why would he think, why do you think I was a Christian? Because Christians don't normally accept their African culture. That's that's what I think he was saying. Because there's no reason for somebody to think I'm a Muslim. I'm not. So why do you think I'm a Muslim? Because I wear African clothes. I express my Africanity. That's me. This is who I am. When you ask the question, who are you? I'm part of those 100 ethnic groups of Africans who came here and probably mixed with Native Americans and Europeans and all that. But I live, and I always tell people, because you know, African Americans are quick to say, well, you know, I'm mostly Native American. You know, every African American is Native American, right? So that's all right with me, except here's the thing. That may be your biological history, but your cultural history is that you live the life of an African American. You do sweet potatoes and you do, you know, macaroni and cheese. Your music is same as mine. You are African American. So identity is not just your bloodline, it is also your culture. What culture? I always ask people, they say, well, I'm Polish and Italian. And they're black as I, yours, that's black as I am. So I say, but do you speak Polish? No, I don't speak Polish. Do you speak Italian? No, I don't speak Italian. Do you understand Ebonics? A good test is, if I say to you, who dat? Do you understand what that means? If you understand what who dat means, you're African American. You're African American. No. So it's a very interesting thing that we have to deal with, is that knowledge part. So that's one part. Now the second part I told you, two. That was the knowledge, the other one was character. There's a Yoruba expression. The Yoruba are a large ethnic group in Nigeria, about 40 million people. And they have a long history. And their sacred text is called the Odu Ifa, O-D-U-I-F-A. 2 words, Odu Ifa, meaning the books of Ifa, the books of God. Now, the Odu Ifa is 256 chapters or verses or books. And in the Odu Ifa, one of the things that comes through very strongly is that the ancient Yoruba people believe that the most important, this is just a comparison to show you something, the most important value to have and to teach your children is character. Now, in our Christian context, because I grew up in Mount Olivet Baptist Church in Georgia, our Christian context is that the most important value is love. They don't even discuss that in Yoruba text. This is kind of confusing in their minds, this notion of love. But when they talk about that, they talk about character. The word is Iwa, I-W-A, Iwa. And they sometimes say Iwa Pele, P-E-L-E, Iwa Pele. Good character. That of all things, what God demands of you, and this is what I taught my son, who is now a college professor. What God demands of you, the same thing I demand of you, character. I'm not demanding of you wealth. I'm not asking for wealth. I'm not even asking that you necessarily make straight A's in school. But if you have character, you will try to do the best you can. I want to see character. I'm not even asking for fame. I just want to see character, good character. Because here's what the Yoruba text says. Ifa says that if you have children, and because that's a value in the African context, to have children. If you have children and you do not have character, the children do not belong to you. If you have money and you do not have character, the money does not belong to you. It went on, the text goes on down. So this is what is demanded, what is asked of you is this character thing, this context of character. and to have a strong sense of that. And it's been in our people. I mean, I look at when I read the lives of people like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer. The next month we're celebrating we just built a statue in honor of Fannie Lou Hamer in Rouville, Mississippi. And on October the 5th, we're going down to actually unveil this statue of Fannie Lou Hamer. Her story, every time I read it, makes me cry. It's an incredible story of courage. I don't even think that in the annals of our history, it's one of those stories that if you say the 10 most significant stories in our history, teach your children, let them read Fannie Lou Hamer's story. That's how you create the character, you see. You let them read these stories of people like Fannie Lou Hamer, and they will ask you questions, and they will want to know, why did they treat her this way? What happened, and why did she continue to go on and on and on? That's the important aspect of character. Character includes discipline, great sense of discipline. If somebody asks you to do something, and we teach our young men to be disciplined, to have a sense of responsibility, and to work out on the basis of doing that which is responsible. There is this story, and it may be apocryphal. That is, it's maybe mythical now. The story, of the young black boy who held a lantern for George Washington. You may have heard this story. You see it sometimes on the lawns of homes, at least in the South. You used to have a little black boy holding a lantern. And some up here in the North, most of the time, you see a little white statue holding a lantern. Well, the story is that in Washington's crossing into New Jersey on the way to Trenton of the Delaware River, that it was a little black boy who was asked to hold a lantern so that the troops, the soldiers of George Washington's army could see where to come ashore. And in the cold, he held the lantern so long and so steady that he froze to death. And that's why they began making these statues of the little black boy holding this lantern. But that was the story of his incredible sense of that I've got to do this. I've got to hold this statue, this lantern. And everywhere in our history, we have seen over and over again these incredible stories of victory. Finally, let me say this. I'm bringing this to a close. In 1885, when we were freed from bondage, most of us, we were 4.5 million people. There may have been 200,000 free blacks, but most of us, 4.5 million, were freed from bondage. When we were freed from bondage, after 246 years of enslavement, now remember, we haven't been free as long as we were enslaved. So we have to remind ourselves of that, because sometimes we think, well, we really should have made more progress, and maybe we should have. But remember, we were in bondage 246 years. That's quite a long time. And we still have about another 100 years to go to equal the time that we were in bondage, you see? And then we say, well, we're now free 246 years. No, we were in bondage 246 years, but we have been out maybe 146 or something close to it. But here's the deal. If you look at our history, after that time, we built over 100 universities and colleges. We call them institutes. Tuskegee Institute, for example. That's what we were building. This is self-determination. This is the character part. This is where we were. I mean, women and men in churches built schools, started institutions. I mean, it's like, so somebody asked me, why are we not doing that now? I said, we still can do it. We still have that capability. We're people, we are builders. That's part of the character of the African American. We build institutions, and we can build. And most of our institutions have been not-for-profit. Most other people build, sometimes people say we don't have organizations. We have organizations, we have a lot of organizations, but ours are not-for-profit. White people build profit organizations, right? So that may be one difference, but we do build institutions and organizations. We can do that. Our character is the character of builders. And that's, of course, a part of that historical process of our people. So when we see that after 1865, and we see people becoming politicians and getting involved, and remember, the so-called Reconstruction period only lasts 12 years. By 1877, it was over. White people cut it off quick. They say, oh no, I mean, these black people are voting and they're going around here becoming senators and representatives, and no, we can't stop. And then Ku Klux Klan comes in. Then the lynching comes in. An incredible period, a big period of denying us the right to vote. That's why we have to vote. And teach people you have to exercise that power. That's extremely important. I remember, and I'm going to close, but I remember talking to my niece recently, who visited from Florida. I said, you better make sure that everybody in your house votes. Well, I'm going to pray for Obama. I said, sister, hey, you can pray, but you got to help God out. You better vote. If you don't vote, and all that prayer, that's not, no. People have to vote. You teach people to do things concretely as well. Do both of them, pray and vote. But don't just say, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray for him. I know he's going to win because I'm going to pray for him. No, I don't believe that. You got to vote. That's extremely important. Teach our people to vote. Teach them to exercise their agency and to be who we ought to be and who we can be. That's the important thing. In the end, we are no better. Our children are no better than we are. They are the products of what we teach them. And if you remember to teach them, and give them that knowledge, and give them that sense of character, we will continue to build a strong people, and the strong men will keep coming, and the strong young women keep coming along, as the poet Sterling Brown once said. Thank you very much.